Gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about funerals and funeral etiquette here on Big Pretty Man. Hi, and welcome back to Big Pretty Man, channel for the extra large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra large man. Okay guys, a couple of videos back, I actually did a video on death in the extra large man, wherein I talked about the responsibilities that we all have to partake of in preparation for our passing, and the extra accommodations and finances that will be needed for an extra large man. But it made me start thinking, I've never done a video on funerals and funeral etiquette, so I thought it was about time. Now, most of us, if not all, have had to attend a funeral sometime in our life, either for a direct family member, grandmother, parent, sibling, as well as for friends or even relatives of friends or distant relatives. Funerals where you're not the one in the direct line of grief, and funerals can be extremely awkward and uncomfortable. You're going to see someone who has passed away, and even more than that, you're having to deal with a family that is, and loved ones that are of the one that passed, who are dealing with a lot of grief, and you really don't know what to say to that much mourning and that much grief. You feel kind of useless, like anything you would say or do, is not going to make any difference. And knowing how to act at a funeral and the proper etiquettes, it's not something that's normally taught. So it can make a funeral a very uncomfortable situation. So, I thought here I would go over some very basic etiquette that will help you get through this social interaction, which we all have to confront at some time or another. Now, this advice is more for going to a funeral to someone maybe not so directly in your line of grief. If it's a grandparent of yours or a parent or an aunt, uncle, or a sibling, or God forbid, one of your children, at that point you are the one in grief. You are the one in the deepest mourning. And at that point, don't worry about etiquette. People are the ones that are addressing you. You are the most direct kin. You are the one in the true grief. You don't have to worry about all of that. However, if you're attending the funeral for someone that, like I said, may not be directly related to you, or someone you may not have known or even been that close to, and but you're still at this funeral, this is more for you. Now, one of the first things you need to do is, even before you go to a funeral, is you need to send condolences to the family, the most direct family, spouse, children, parents. And the best way to do that is, I wouldn't recommend a phone call unless it's someone you know very, very well. I would recommend sending them a note or a card. And I say note and card because in this day and age, so many people communicate by text or by email, and for this type of loss, for this type of life event, I don't see that as appropriate. I see that as very uncouth. I know that in today's age, especially among the young, that may be a little more acceptable, but still, I think that these people's world have been turned upside down. They deserve a little more respect and a little more compassion than that. So take the time to actually write out a nice note, or you can get them a card, and send that. Keep the language simple in what you write in. Just say, I'm thinking of you and feeling very sorry for your loss and thinking of you. Call upon me, if you need me, that type of thing. Assign it, sincerely, sincerely sorry, whatever, that type of thing. And send that. That's a much more personal and compassionate move, much more than somebody sending a text, with a frown face, or a tear face. Nobody wants an emoji when they're grieving a dead parent or grandparent. So send a nice note or send a card. that's most appropriate. Now, when you another thing that you can do is, and this is a tradition in the South. I'm not really sure in the North. I haven't seen it as prevalent. I could be wrong, but one thing that we do in the South is we send a dish. Send a dish to the family, or take a dish to the family, a dish of food. The reason for that being is that these are people in horrible grief, going through a horrible loss, and plus they're having to make funeral on top of this grief. They're having to make funeral arrangements, working with insurances and all of this, with graveyards, and they're arranging this whole funeral, and then and on top of this horrible, emotions they're going through, this roller coaster. A lot of people don't have time or inclination to be cooking during all of that. So to take a dish of something to the family, that shows a lot of consideration. That is directly showing, I am helping out. I feel for your grief, and I'm helping out. Here's here's something to help you get through this. At least take a little bit of that one little burden off of them. When I was a kid, I hate to say it, but I kind of got a little happy if I heard someone in the family I didn't directly know, maybe a great uncle or some third cousin removed, had passed away. So I'm like, ooh, we're gonna get food. It's gonna be like Thanksgiving, because you usually get a lot of food, a lot of fried chicken, and for some reason a lot of potato salad. In fact, comedian James Gregory, actually, who's Southern, he said of this, you give us a body and a bowl of tater salad, and we'll have ourselves a funeral. It's so true. But yeah, taking a dish of something for the family to eat on, so they don't have to worry about it, that's a very compassionate and very useful thing that you can do. I highly recommend it. Now, another tradition I want to talk about is sending flowers. Of course, it is a custom, especially in Western culture, to send flowers for a funeral. Now, one thing you have to remember: be sure to check the religion and the ethnicity and the culture of the person who's died. For instance, you do not send flowers to a Jewish funeral. That's a no-no. They use the little rocks that they put on the grave, but you don't send flowers. So you need to be aware, know what you're sending it, who you're sending the flowers to, and make sure that it is appropriate. Another thing on that, now, so a lot of things you see today is when they say, in lieu of flowers, please make a contribution to a charity or some other financial institution. In that case, do not send flowers. Just don't. Now, a lot of people may say, well, I'll make a donation and I'll send flowers. No, just make the donation in their name. That's disrespecting the family. They're not wanting flowers. They may have a reason they don't want flowers. Maybe someone's allergic to flowers. It's going directly in the funeral, in the funeral family those mourning before, or maybe they see it to as ostentation. Whatever the reasons, if they put in there, obviously you do not want flowers, so don't send flowers. Make the donation. And if you're wondering how much, well, find out how much the flowers are going to be. If it's really a big question, how much the flowers are going to be, and then send that amount. So in lieu of flowers, you have literally done what they wanted and sent the same money for the flowers for this charitable organization that they chose, and that's the best way to handle that. Well, now let's talk about actually attending the funeral. And of course, the first thing we'll address is how to dress for the funeral. Now, normally, if you watch all my videos, you know that I always say, to stand out from the suit clone. Show some individuality. Show some pop in your outfit. Come in and rule the room. Make things pop with a lot of different accessories and proper color combinations. And stand apart from everyone else. And that still applies to every other situation, I think, but not for a funeral. A funeral is the exception to the rule. In a funeral, you don't want to do any of that. You don't want to pop. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to rule the room. The person ruling the room is laying in a box or in an urn. So you got to remember that this is the most tragic time in these people's lives. It's not a time to be flashy. It's not a time to network. So the basic three S's for dressing for a funeral are to be are somber, subdued, and simple. Somber, subdued, and simple. That's where you want to keep it. So so if you notice, like right now, I'm dressed, as I would if I was going to a funeral today. The most traditional color in the West, of course, is to wear black. And normally I recommend not wearing black suits. I've preached against this. However, this is the exception to the rule as well. A black suit, this is what a black suit's made for. It's a funeral, really, in my opinion. This is a perfect place where you wear a black suit. Now you can go with a darker, like a navy suit, or you can go with maybe a charcoal suit. But you do need to wear a suit. Do not show up to someone's funeral, in jeans and t-shirts. That is, unless it's been specified by the family. Some families may want that type of informality. That's really up to them. But if that's not specifically specified, you need to put on a suit. This is a person who has died. Their whole life, their life is over. They've either moved on to some other realm, or it's lights out, whatever you believe. But either way, this is a human being that existed on this earth, and is now maybe has a family, who's made an impact in his world, and now they are gone. So show that life some respect, and put on a suit. And also remember this: funerals are not just for the dead, but they're also for even more so socially for those in grief, for their families, for their close friends. Because really, in truth, the dead, they're dead. It's they're not feeling anything. Whether you believe their spirit flew off, or that they just their brain's dead and they're just that's it. They're extinguished. They don't really they don't really care. The ones that care are the people that they leave behind. So you need to bear that in mind and show them that respect. So once again, dress properly for the funeral, and don't try to be too flashy. Now, if you look at what I'm wearing, it's ideal really for a funeral. I'm wearing black. I have a black tie, a simple white shirt. Note the tie is not striped. It does not have any designs. It's not the place for this. It's not the place to be flashy and stand out once again. Just a plain black silk tie. And the only accessory that I have is a pocket square. As you see, it's just a plain white and no fancy fold. It's just a very conservative presidential fold. That's it. That you don't, no boutonnieres, nothing flashy and fancy. Just a straight black suit with a white shirt and a white pocket square. That's perfect for a funeral. And of course, black shoes, black slacks. That's a suit. So, but now one thing to take note of, just like I talked about with the flowers, is that you also need to really look at the culture. And the belief systems of the person who has passed away and their family. For instance, in some countries like India, a lot of the Asian countries, and China and India, the traditional color for a funeral is white, not black. They would see black as being disrespectful. You need to bear that in mind. You don't want to walk into a funeral where everyone's dressed in white, and you walk in all black like a Grim Reaper. So know the people, and if you have any question on something like that, it's okay to call either a friend of their closer friend of the family, or a member of that family, and say, I want to come to your funeral. What is the appropriate, say they're Hindu, they're Indian, they're Hindu. I'm coming to your funeral. What colors would be inappropriate to wear? Can I wear black, or should I wear white? They'll tell you. And they'll respect that you took that much time to find out. So that's something you definitely want to bear in mind. Now, when you first arrive at a funeral home, one of the first things you should do is go and pay your respects to those in grief, to the family, and there usually is a receiving line for this, or the family standing near the coffin. The first thing you want to do is approach them, and this is probably the most awkward moment of a funeral. for your interaction at the funeral, especially if it's not someone that you're directly related to, or it's a tertiary friends or a family of friends. And this can be a very awkward moment. And people at this time are very sensitive, and they feel isolated and alone in their grief. And it's a wall that they feel like they can't be penetrated. And in many ways, it can't be. Grief is something people have to go through internally alone. All that anyone can do, whether a close friend or family, a close friend or other family members, is to be compassionate and to be understanding and to be supportive. And therefore, be careful what you say when you go up to them. This is a one of the most tender emotional moments in their lives. So, what the best advice I can give is to keep it simple. Actually, same with the driver's seat, somber and simple, and direct. When you go up, don't bring up anything real personal. Don't or try to compare your experience to what they're going through. That's a big no-no. Don't walk up and say, I know exactly what you're going through. I went through this when I lost my dad. You don't know what they're going through. And that's the first thing they're going to be in their mind. You have no idea what I'm going through. And they're going to feel, it's going to look conceited and even condescending a bit to them to say, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. That's very presumptuous. And that's not the thing to say. And also be careful about making comments about the person's character. Walking up, even if you're lying, and saying, oh, he was a wonderful person, so generous, was a sweet guy. For all you know, that family thinks he was an asshole. For all you know, that you may be talking to a family member that was estranged from this person. You don't know the family dynamic. You don't know the relationships and the complications of that relationship. So once again, don't get too personal. Keep it a little more general. Probably the best thing to say is just to go up and you give condolences and offer support. So walk up and say something like, I am so sorry for your loss. Please understand, you're in me and my family's thoughts and prayers. If I can do anything or be of any assistance, I'm a phone call away. And please do not hesitate to call upon me. And then step away. Now, I would not go up to hug people. For one thing, we are in the age of COVID. Some people are very touchy about being touched. And also, a lot of people don't want to be touched at this point. You don't know. It's okay to offer a hand. Offer a handshake. If they take the hand, it's good. Maybe put your other hand on the hand and give a more thoughtful handshake. A little more of a hold. A little bit more of an embracing hold. And say, I am so sorry for your loss. And kind of hold it for a minute. Now, if they offer to hug you, definitely give them a hug. If they want to cry, and in some situations you may get somebody that might cry on your shoulder. Just ride with it. That can happen. So, you're showing that you're just being there. But normally, if it's just a nice, embracing handshake, double-handed handshake, maybe a pat on the shoulder if it's a man, and then move on. So that's the best thing there. Now, while you're at the funeral, as I said, one thing that you remember where you are. You're at a funeral. It's a time to be somber and contemplative and respectful. So don't get too loud. Keep your voice at a regular level. This is not the place to be telling baldy jokes or big laughter. This is a time to be subdued. To speak in a low voice. If you get in a big conversation with people, make sure it's a little bit out of the receiving room where the body is. And of course, after you see the family, it's always more appropriate to go up and pay respects at the body. And while you're up there, by the way, and I've seen this, never say the words, "They look so natural." No, they don't. They look dead. Okay, naturally they're not going to be laying in a suit with makeup in a box. They look dead. Let's I think that's very disrespectful to say. Say that's especially if families nearby. They don't look respectful. They look dead, and you're just a statement like that could really upset someone, even if they don't say anything. Just walk up, have a look, and pay your respects. But as I said, this is not a place to network. This is not a place to be working the room. This is, you're there to celebrate someone else's life. Same thing when you go to the graveyard. And one thing, you go to the graveyard, don't put on the dark glasses to show that you're not crying. I find that's something from a movie, and it looks fake. It looks pretentious. Leave the glasses off, unless the sun's really in your face. But that's what you got a hat on for. And that's another thing. Be sure during prayers or even when you enter a funeral home, if you're wearing a hat, to take it off. And also, if you happen to run into the family or member outside when you first approach, take your hat off. And hold it in your left hand and offer your right hand to shake. But remove your hat. That shows respect in this moment of grief. So there we go. Now, the next thing I would talk about would be a wake. Now, wakes don't always take place, but they often do, where you get invited to go to someone's house after the funeral to partake of drinks and food and to talk about, to celebrate the person's life. If you're invited to this, there's a couple of rules to this one as well. Now, you don't have to be as somber as you were in the funeral home or at the grave, and one thing I forgot I wanted to say is, no matter if you're religious or not, whether you believe in God, you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, agnostic, whatever, if you're a different religion, if it comes time for a prayer, lower your head and take off your hat and lower your head. You don't have to pray with them, but you can show them that respect for their beliefs. Just want to throw that in there. I've seen that at funerals where people didn't believe in God and they just stand straight up, looking around. Show some respect. You didn't believe it, but probably the dead person believed it. The family believes it. This is for them, not for you. So, just look at the ground. Turn your head, put your hands in front, in the front, and just look at the ground. Just show that respect. Look at it as a moment of silent meditation. But anyway, so back to the wake. If at a wake. You can be a little louder here. You can talk a little more. You can, this is a time to maybe a little more relaxed. Still remember to be respectful. Don't eat too much. This is not a feast. This is a wake for someone that passed away. Don't turn into a hog here. Look at it and say, hey, free eats. No, be respectful. Also, don't get drunk. I've seen that far too often. Don't get drunk. Because getting drunk now, because a lot of times I've seen that with family members. It's a little more acceptable with them because they're, a little shot of the sauce, might calm the nerves. If not, 4 or 5 will. That's for them, but for you, stay sober. Drink, be a social drinker. Have 1 or 2, no more than that. When you speak, be careful about speaking of the person. Don't make any judgments. Try to mention something positive or even a little funny. Hear comedy. You often find that comedy is levity in this situation. So this is the place, not in the funeral home. That's not the place to be telling the joke about the brothel and the inflatable sex doll. Maybe a little more acceptable at the wake, So you can loosen up a little bit, but definitely share your experiences about the person. Share the positive ones. Tell funny stories. That this is the place for that. Also, before you leave, be sure to once again go to the family and say, once again, you need anything. Don't say I'm sorry for your loss. You've already said that. Say once again, you remember, you need anything. I'm a phone call away. I'm a text, a phone call, whatever you need. If you need me for something, please call upon me, and then step out. Now, after the funeral, it'd be very nice, maybe within, maybe a few weeks later, to send them a card saying, another card again saying, or a note saying, hey, I hope you're doing well. Thinking of you. Once again, call me if you need anything or if you just need someone to talk. Something like that. And another good practice is maybe if you remember it, if you know the person's birthday that passed away, contact them then and say, thinking of you today and this, and thinking of your loss today on the day of their birth. Things like that are very compassionate and are remembered. And maybe they'll actually come to your funeral, which is always a good thing. You don't want to be dead. There's 3 people there and 2 of them work for the funeral home. So that's the best way to handle a funeral. And finally, let me just say that I've been preparing for this funeral video for about a week or so. And I find it sadly ironic and tragically a tragic coincidence that I end up having to do it just a few days after the passing of one of the most iconic people in recent history. Of course, I'm talking about the death of Her Royal Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Now, as a lot of you may know, and I've said it before, I'm quite an Anglophile, and I am almost completely of English descent. All 4 branches of my family, both my mother's mother and father and my father's mother and father, all their family lines come from England. My father's family actually came over here in 1768. So, I'm by inheritance, I am very much British. Of British descent, and that I see England as the land of my ancestors. So I did feel a loss at the passing of the beloved Queen. Maybe not as deeply as the British people. However, it did affect me nonetheless, because when I looked at the Queen of England, what I saw was not only her legacy but her bloodline. I saw all of to me, she was a living embodiment of British history. In her veins ran the blood of William the Conqueror, of Edward III, of King James I, of Queen Victoria, of all the kings of Scotland. She was descended from the Plantagenet. She was descended from the Tudors, the Stuarts, the Hanoverians, and of course now the Windsors. To me, she was the heart of England, and she was the living embodied spirit of the United Kingdom. So so I definitely felt her loss. And to all of my British friends out there, may I offer my condolences to you. May I offer my condolences to the royal family in their time of transition and grief. And know that I am grieving along with you. My Anglo-American heart is breaking over the loss of the Queen. And and let's all wish King Charles III, who has inherited of all that legacy, all of our hopes and prayers. The Queen is dead. God save the King.